Morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, you hear me okay in the room? Great, kinda, huh? Feels like it should be a kinda, because it doesn't seem that loud to me. No?
Not as loud.
Not, yeah, Mark has a very loud voice anyway, but I mean, Mark has a voice that projects. Dan, would you mind turning the main volume up just one or two notches? Hello, hello. Any better? Doesn't seem to be just no change, huh? Okay. Hello, test. Good back there, but test. Good. Yeah, that's getting better. Yep. You have it on 62 or 63?
What's that?
What's the number?
Oh, I'm turning up the light.
Okay. All right.
If
If you,
turn up the volume, like,
yeah, turn up the main volume one or two notches. Hello, test.
not 60.
Okay, good. It should be okay. I'll do my best for all of you in the back. Okay. You hear me okay on Zoom? Great. Thanks for your patience with technology. So we'll begin by chanting what we call the 4 quarters chant, which is on page 30 of your chant book. And I just put it in the chat for those of you on Zoom. So this is a simple chant. If you're new to it, it repeats with a change of basically one word, right? So we're chanting and welcoming in the 4 Brahma Viharas, which we might call 4 qualities of love, right? The heart that is naturally kind or friendly, it's not leaning in towards ill will. And then the heart that meets compassionate heart, or the heart that meets suffering, is the second form of love or kindness. And then the third form of love or kindness is gladness, the heart that appreciates someone else's well-being or goodness or good fortune, right? The heart that's gladdened by another person's beauty. Yeah. And then the fourth is equanimity, fourth kind of love or care or kindness, or there's many ways to describe this energy. And this is equanimity brings forth wisdom. So it allows us to be brave, right? In the face of anything, still have a heart that is sensitive and caring and not rejecting or contentious, right in the middle of life as it is. Yeah. So when we chant the 4 Brahma Viharas, we're welcoming in these energies into our heart. Okay, so now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide perfect in 1 quarter, with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all that's to my soul, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will find pervading 1 quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion.
My meditation space.
Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all that's to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one order, with a mind imbued with gladness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one fold, with a mind imbued with equanimity, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading all the sweet world, with a mind imbued with honesty, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. As our bodies become more still, we can invite the words to settle into the heart. There's no need to think about them, though, or hold on. Just trust in this heart's capacity to learn. And to do that in its own time. And although it might seem funny to say, but we don't have to actually do anything to meditate. In fact, it's more of an undoing than a doing. Learning how to rest, not push or demand. It's a radical movement from trying to control life to actually being okay in the midst of anything. In this heart that's okay in the middle of anything. It's not a heart that's disconnected. Or detached. It's a heart that feels. A heart that's unafraid of feeling or being sensitive. To any experience, any movement of life, any emotion. Any thought. Any body sensation. This fearless heart takes it in, accepts it, doesn't resist, doesn't pursue. This is a steady heart. A reliably steady heart. Not a heart that strives for perfection. But a deeply trusting heart. A heart that trusts the movement of nature. The coming and going of experience due to its own causes and conditions. And if this feels challenging, it should. There's a lot of momentum pulling us in other directions. Control this, get rid of that, hold on to this. So we can be okay with these movements too. Because they're also just nature, just habit. Habit with momentum. And so in the most ordinary of ways, just keep being willing to connect with the body, with the activity of mind, with the motion. anything the ears receive, any aspect of body or mind. Connect, receive, care. Don't push. It's not needed. Let's continue in silence now. Take a minute or two if you'd like to stretch your legs. I'm also going to change the network that I'm on. So if you see me freeze that for a minute, Zoomers, that's why. Now, Zoomers, you hear me okay still? Great. And I've done everything I can to make it loud enough in here, so I'll do my best. So first, welcome to everybody once again. You might be expecting to see Mark Nunberg, who is one of Common Ground's founders, along with his partner, Win Fricke. And Mark's been the guiding teacher here since its inception. I am also a guiding teacher here, just more recent addition the last couple of years. So I'm happy to be here filling in for Mark while he's away with his family this weekend, but he'll be back next week. So I lead a practice group just like this, but on Wednesday nights. And we're following this book. We just started it called A Heart as Wide as the World by one of the most prolific authors in this tradition, Sharon Salzberg. Not only is Sharon, I can't say enough about her, just, I don't know if you've read this book, it's quite old, 1997, but it's so good. And it's small, but it's really deceiving the size because it's packed full of the whole path. Sharon's one of the founders of Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, and has a very deep practice. And in addition to that, she has a real specific worldly skill of being a very good writer and a good writer for everybody. So I find Sharon's, I read this probably 20 years ago, and when I was pretty new on the path, and I found it such an accessible read when I didn't know anything. And now I know one or two things, not a lot, but one or two things. And I'm really enjoying it again and just feeling the depth of the teachings that she makes really accessible and offers them up so nicely. And so I want to read a little bit from one of these chapters. They're all quite short, about 2 pages. It says, in many ways, the world is calling out to us all the time. I have what you need. I have what you need. In response, we internalize those voices into, I need something. Right? I'm in a state of deficit, of deprivation. It's as though we turn into some sort of cartoon figure with our eyes popping out of our heads like they are on springs. Where is it? Where is that thing I need? Our arms extend, reaching out, the fingers flex, trying to grab and hold on to one object or another. our heads rigidly fixed in the direction of the object of desire so as not to lose sight of it, our bodies inclined forward in anticipation. What an uncomfortable mess. And yet, as we reach out time and time again, believing the voices, this movement, this constant reaching out is felt as stress in the body and in the mind. I have what you need, the voice tells us, but you don't have what I need. I have what you need. But is that what you really need? All of those voices lead us away from knowing that we already have what we need. When we practice meditation, we discover the treasure of our original nature. We learn to let go of that cacophony of voices shouting at us about our seeming poverty. We learn not to get caught in trying to reach out and grasp after things we never really needed to begin with. When we practice meditation, we see that we can put down the burdens we have carried for so long. The poet Rumi says, "How long will we fill our pockets like children with dirt and stones? Let the world go. Holding it, we never know ourselves, never are airborne." When we practice meditation, we let go. We let go of our addictions to certain objects and experiences. We let go of believing in those voices that called us. We let go of our limited concepts of happiness and of who we are and what we need. Discovering the treasure of our original nature, we can be airborne, we can be free. I don't know if that feels inspiring to you, but I've read it probably like a dozen times in the last week, and it feels inspiring to me every time I read it. And not just inspiring, but provocative. Let the world go. And we have everything that we need inside. Those are provocative ideas. And so I want to talk a little bit about maybe, I'll attempt to make some sense of that in an ordinary way for us all, and talk a little bit about this heart that feels and what we're actually doing with this heart when it feels. So there's this Pali word, chitta, which is where this word heart comes from. This English word heart that we use is often pointing to this Pali word chitta. And chitta, the translations are never perfect, right? Always the word in which something originated, the language in which it originated holds a lot of meaning that any other language doesn't quite point to, but we do our best. And it seems that the translators think heart's about as good as it gets in English. Yeah. And so this chitta is really the emotional quality of the heart. The sensitive, vibratory quality of the heart. So when we practice, this comes alive for us. We begin to be more feeling, more intimate creatures because of chitta, right? And chitta is it's porous, right? And it will take up it doesn't discriminate, right? So it vibrates with life, with experience all the time, right? We feel something, we have a thought that we don't like. Maybe I'm only one that's noticed this, but have an aversive thought of some sort. And I feel the heart goes like constricts or feels tight, or the body responds as well too, right? So chitta and body are like married. Yeah. Well, they're very sympathetic. They vibe for sure, right? So when you come in contact with one, with practice, we start to come in contact with both, right? And in fact, it's really hard to tease them apart. Yeah. So when our hearts become more sensitive to the way things are, our bodies will respond to that as well. Yeah. That's why an aversive thought in the mind that feels a kind of maybe even elusive constrictedness of heart is really felt as a tightness of body too, right? Or in the same way, a fantasy of some sort is also felt in the body of some sort, of some kind, right? So chitta, sometimes and chitta, we might say, is the heart, the sensitive heart. but it's often talked about as heart mind, right? Those are the same things in Buddhism. It's this quality of connecting and feeling, right? That we're actually pointing to. And there are two Pali words that point here in the direction of the heart mind. One is chitta and one is manos. And manos is like this intellectual quality that knows how to name experience, right? So we might connect with a sensation in the knee, and I might call that pain. It's actually in this knee. I might call that pain, right? That naming of pain or naming of a sensation is where that kind of manos quality of the mind comes in. Yeah. And we're fairly good at that, right? We can name experience. We can name objects, a sound, even a feeling of sadness, or even a feeling of tightness or spaciousness. We're good at that. But what we need a lot of practice with is that sensitivity, that heartfeltness, right? That open-heartedness, chitta. And chitta is the sensitive heart, is naturally quite, we might say it's quite clear. Yeah. So one image is of like a clear lake, a smooth lake, that if a lake is really smooth and then a leaf kind of falls down through the air current and gently lands on the lake, it still ripples, right? The lake still ripples, that smooth lake still ripples. Well, that's like the impact of chitta with experience. Any experience that we have, it all has an impact. It all has a little ripple, right? And so it's when we say that in every moment of our lives, we're impacted, right? We resonate with life in this way. When we develop, as practice matures, the heart gets better and better at feeling the ripple that's there. Right? One of the things that Sharon says that this movement, this constant reaching out is felt as stress in the body and in the mind. I have what you need, the voice tells us. You don't have what you need, I have what you need, right? This constant looking for something external that's going to make us happy is at the heart of our predicament as human beings, right? And so we might call that being impassioned with experience, right? And this provocative statement is that set the world down is not a statement about don't care about the world, right? That's the provocative nature of this kind of thing. We misunderstand that to mean like, oh, don't care about life. This is a practice of detaching or moving further away from experience, but that's not it at all, right? It's about becoming sensitive and growing in wisdom so that the heart learns how to be with experience as it is. And that movement of setting down or not reaching out and trying to grab all the time is what we might call dispassion. Right? So it's not like a setting down the caring nature of the heart, that sensitive, intimate quality of heart that is willing to be with life on life's terms. But it's learning to just let that be, right? Let the heart be the heart, the sensitive heart be the sensitive heart, and the ripple be the ripple. So we might call this a path of dispassion, but that doesn't mean that we don't put our hearts into things, right? That doesn't mean that we don't give our hearts over to life. That doesn't mean that we don't care, right? It doesn't mean we don't fully engage in the things that we really care about. It just means that we fully engage without that trying to hold on or pull towards or grab or control, right? So the dispassion part of it is like feeling it, feeling okay with just this movement of goodness to respond as we will, right? To life as it moves through us, in and around us. And this word, this Pali word that is used to describe dispassion is often viraga, is what the Pali comes from. The word that we translate it into is often dispassion. But raga can mean impassioned, right? And it also gets described as like a cloth that soaks up the dye, right? And viraga is like this fading away of dye that's left in the sun, right? So with this sensitive heart that connects with the way things are, this dispassion is like the fading away of that which doesn't serve us, right? And we have to kind of feel that out or see that for ourselves, like what isn't serving. Right? Sharon's call to really notice the internal shift, right? Instead of holding on, reaching out, always reaching out, we start to notice this process that's at work. Oh, chitta feels sensitive, and chitta doesn't discriminate, right? It will soak up anything that it's being nourished by, right? So then we start to have a choice here. Wait, do we want chitta to be soaked up by ill will all day long, or frustration or anger or hatred? You know, have you ever noticed that in your minds, any of those things? Yeah, sometimes I do. And those energies, they just have a way of breeding, right? So I wake up, something irritates me, and then the next thing irritates, and then the next and the next, and I'm not really paying attention to what's happening in the mind. But chitta is not discriminating, it's sensitive to, you know, what's moving in and around me, and learning how to live that way, right? So then we become aware of that. Oh, wait a second. Like, I don't want chitta to be nourished by these energies. I want to see if chitta can be nourished by other energies, right? Like the energies of generosity and kindness and acceptance, right? Standing in the middle. I've worked as a social worker for almost 20 years, in addition to teaching and doing some Dharma, doing a lot of Dharma work these days. And I'm decreasing that work, that social work. But so often in my 20 years of practice, I've noticed like it feels like always standing in the middle of unsolvable problems. And the moments that I feel burned out, I've learned with practice, my meditation practice, to feel that holding on and wanting to control, wanting to fix, wanting things to be different, and not just different, but different right now, right? And that is a recipe for burnout, because the heart is no longer willing to accept the way things are and give itself over to life on life's terms, to really care about it and move with it, right? I don't feel burned out in those moments, right? The heart feels really loving and alive. But those moments when the heart is like, this is awful and it needs to change right now. And what am I going to do? And what are you going to do? And it's like a tightening. It's that stress that Sharon is pointing to, that we don't notice all the time. But as practice matures, we can start to notice that more and more often. Right? That holding on, that grasping, that inner grasping. So raga is that very impassioned, like intensely desirous. How do you say that word? Is that a word? Arlita, writer? Yeah. Is that how you say it? You're better than that though. It's intensely lustful, not just like lustful in a sexual way, but that reaching out and trying to hold on to something, right? That movement. Yeah. And so dispassion, that is that fading away of that energy, right? That setting down of that energy. And Gil Fronsdal, a wonderful Dharma teacher and one of my teachers and a wonderful translator, he will use the word freedom in to replace impassioned, right? Or to replace dispassion. So impassioned, the opposite of freedom. Yeah. It's not caring, but freedom, even though it might not be the perfect translation, in English, it points to something that makes a lot of sense to us, right? When we feel that fading away of that leaning in towards burnout, that has a felt sense on the heart and body, right? That we can know right here and now, right? And so we want to be really curious about those moments, right? We want to be like a sponge, or at least this is how I want to be, like a sponge, and really be sensitive to that feeling of freedom, right? And to be curious about how to live that way, not to live in a way that's disconnected, but to live with that sense of freedom, to do everything I need to do during the day and want to do during the day with a heart that knows how to be sensitive, how to take it in, and how to let it go. Chitta always is more grounded in the body, right? Because chitta doesn't discriminate, it will just soak up whatever it's around, right? It's grounded in the body. You know, one way to keep ourselves from spinning out all the time is to feel the body, right? It might not be the easiest thing, but actually it's a safeguard. Yeah. And I don't say that casually. Yeah. The safeguard is that the body is a more dense reality for us, right? And often the mind that feels something that is leaning into grasping or craving or a more impassioned response, the heart that's leaning there learns to let that go. That energy starts to fade away because it's grounded in the body. It's really much harder for the mind to just whip up story after story that validates this feeling that we're having when the heart is grounded right in the body, right? Otherwise, you know, that mind that it just naturally wants to go for it, right? The thinking mind naturally just wants to try to solve a problem of thinking by thinking, you know, wants to try to solve any problem by thinking. Yeah. And before we know it, we're not really in the experience of our lives. We're in the story of our lives. And that's not to say that stories aren't useful. We have to really, you know, there's always a balance here, because we're going to apply skillful means throughout our lives, right? So I'm talking about something that's pretty deep into the path. And ordinarily, you know, we also have to realize that, well, if we have stories about how terrible we are, it can be really useful to replace them with stories about, hey, we're doing the best that we can, right? So we want to do that too. And we want to see if we can notice that process of stress that's created in the mind that naturally wants to live in our thinking, right? But the heart that is grounded in the body will have a thought, and that thought will have a resonance right here and now. Right? And so it becomes much harder to become impassioned and swept away by that passion when we feel the stress of that in the body right here. Yeah. So, practical example. I've turned over a new leaf, and I'm trying to get my heart rate up every day. I'm trying to get a little bit of exercise. This is not the first time. There's been many of these moments. I'm giving it a good shot right now, right? And we happen to have an elliptical in our home, and so there's not a real good excuse even when it's hot. Just jump on that thing. And the first couple of days were rough, right? After, you know, having taken a leisurely walk, I take a leisurely walk with my four-legged friend every day, but it's a sniffy walk. It's not a heart rate walk. But on the elliptical, it's really unpleasant. It's not as unpleasant as it was those first couple of days right now, but it's still unpleasant, right? And I noticed that like it's really fine. There's this, I don't really need a lot. There's the elliptical, there's the movement of the body, there's a beautiful tree out the window right in front of me. And when the heart can be really content just gazing at that tree and feeling the body for the 30 minutes that I'm on that machine, right? And there are these moments when the mind wants to whip up a story about how hard it is, right? And this really sucks. And then it goes from like, this really sucks to, oh my God, how much time do I have left? And then before I know it, there's an action and I look down at the screen, right? And then I go, oh my God, I still have 20 more minutes left on this thing, right? And then it's almost breathtaking, right? Because I can feel that. It does feel like stress in the body, all created by that thought world, right? It's unneeded. It's just really unnecessary because the body is doing what the body does. And when this heart learns how to relax and just be sensitive to the movement of life, it's really fine for 30 minutes, right? And so just to notice that, like, it feels like and immediately the heart starts to move a beat a little bit faster and there's a tightening. And now the treadmill or the elliptical feels almost unbearable just for those 10 seconds, right? Or 4 seconds or 3 seconds, but it's definitely palpable, right? And so we can start to tune into even in the most ordinary ways, like what it feels like when the stories are guiding our lives more than the actual felt experience, embodied experience that we're having here and now. It doesn't change. It won't change that this is unpleasant or this is pleasant, right? The movement of the body and when I'm out of shape doesn't feel it doesn't feel pleasant. It feels unpleasant. It feels solidly unpleasant. But that story part makes it extra unpleasant, right? And almost unbearable, right? Another example, I've been, practicing with this in this territory for a little while. And I was noticing that cleaning my house, getting ready for my partner to return home today from a trip, and noticing that the mind that wants to know all of the things on the task list and get them done, like that's it. It might feel like that's a satisfying way to live, right? It does feel satisfying to get something completed. But what happens when that thing gets completed? There's always another thing, right? Which is much different experience to keep replaying the task list. Like, I'm going to wash these dishes. And then the next thing I'm going to do is clean the countertops. And then I'm going to do the floors. And then I'm going to move upstairs. And, like that is a mind that's impassioned by concept in that moment, right? But the mind that allows that to fade away then rests in the experience of actually moving the body, the warm water, the activity, and then this gets completed and then magically something else, we move on with the next task. All of that impassioned thinking about what I have to do next is just really unneeded, right? Because we know that, right? And we're actually it's not like there's anything wrong with planning, but the mind is really committed to that skill, right? And we don't have to, most of the time, we don't have to nurture that skill very much. It's just going to happen for us, right? And so we want to be careful about what we're feeding in these moments. I did want to be careful of what I was feeding and catching it like, aha, do I want to nurture? Do I want to feed chitta this impassioned, nutrition right now? Is this what I want to do? Do I want to nurture this incessant? I don't like it when my mind's worrying or ruminating, but in fact, that's what it's doing right now, right? It's just not unbearable, but it's working on the same skill. So perhaps it's possible to live life in a way that we keep doing the things that we want to do, and we learn how to ease up, in moments when we can ease up. Maybe I'll read a little bit more from Sharon. He says, in meditation practice, we explore the ways we relate to our own experiences and to our motivations for change. We look at the degree of concentration, mindfulness, and love that we bring to bear on whatever may be happening in our lives. Our efforts in meditation are directed toward opening, toward knowing what we feel, toward remaining awake to the suffering and joy we encounter. This is meditation as a way of life, a way of recapturing our lives so that we can delight in the integrity, joy, and peace that arise from understanding the truth of who we are. And so when we get curious about what chitta is being fed, what the heart is being fed, we can also start to tune into the nature of our own goodness, right? Because there is some goodness in that contemplation itself, right? What is chitta being fed? That's a good question, right? What is the heart feeding on right now? And just that movement to be curious about that is a movement towards goodness. Like, how many times during the day do we notice our own goodness? Probably not as often as we notice the ways in which we would like our lives to be different, right? Or like our hearts to be different. And so we don't have to have, a really high bar for ourselves about, like, now I have to set down all impassioned movements of heart. That's not it. That's not the way, actually. The way is just to receive life as it is and to feel the heart's capacity for goodness that's here and now, right? The movement to be sensitive to this is a movement of goodness, right? When we're noticing ourselves caught up in some kind of storm or, that doesn't actually feel good, just to stop and be like, hey, wait a second. Where do I feel? Oh yeah, where do I feel this? I don't even need to go that far, right? I just feel it right here. What does that feel like? And just to take 4 or 5 seconds or 10 seconds to really take it in, right? Because the heart learns just like that. There's not actually anything that we have to do. We'll feel the stress from that previous moment right here on the body. And then the heart will learn, like, oh yeah, well, why live this way, right? Is there a better way? Yeah. When we forget, oh yeah, forgot, right? Really, I forgot about the body altogether. Like, do you have those moments? Yeah. Forget about the body altogether. Just to remember, like, oh, I have this body. I wonder how it's going right now. Right? Oh yeah. You just do like a 10-second body scan, like, what's it like to have this body? Just not even, really that deliberate, but just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to the toe. Okay, got it. I know what it's like to have a body right now. That's a really wholesome movement of energy, right? We're feeding the chitta something really useful in that moment. Embodied, feeling, right? Being sensitive to life, being willing to not control life, just to accept the way it is for us. Like when we think about the ideas that we have about how we want to live or how we want the world to be, don't those feel like useful skills? Be embodied, be able to feel life moving through us, be able to be right in the middle of life as it expresses itself without pretending it's different, right? Nod your head if you think those are good and useful skills. Yeah, good and useful skills. So it's very simple, like practice can be very simple. right? We can make a lot out of it, but we're often making a lot out of it in our hearts and in our minds and with our thinking mind. But it's very pragmatic. It's always about this, right? So when confused, what's it like for me right now? And Chitta knows how to feel that, right? The heart knows how to feel it. Where? In the body. It's like this. That's what we say. It's like this because it feels like this for me for now, right? No problem with saying that. All right. I think I'll leave it here. Thanks for your attention, everybody. Good to be together. Mark will be back next week. If please come. It's been really sweet to see these Sunday mornings growing. Yeah, a lot of people in this room. It's great to feel like we have a Zoom community and an in-person community that's very alive here at Common Ground these days. So thanks for your participation. And if you have a few minutes, if you're here and you have a few minutes to help, Ruth, do you have any announcements for us before I close that? No? Okay. You have a few minutes to help put the chairs back where they need to go. That would be great. Everybody else, take good care.